Trees come in all shapes and sizes. Bonsai trees appeal to everybody's love of the miniature, but how on earth do you grow them and keep them so small to replicate their bigger cousins? I asked bonsai expert Chris Ryding to explain the trade secrets.
Bonsai is not a particularly difficult garden art. If you break it down to its basic elements, it's topiary and horticulture. It's nothing more complicated than a pot plant. Pruning the roots on bonsai doesn't keep them small. That's one of the very popular myths that everybody has about bonsai. It's essentially a pot plant. So when you grow a pot plant, eventually, as it grows, it will get pot bound. And once it's pot bound, it will stop growing. So what you do then is you repot it into a larger pot, and then it starts growing again. With a bonsai, we don't want to put it in a larger pot. We want to keep it in either the same pot or put it in a slightly smaller pot. And the only way you can do that is to trim the roots. And trimming the roots then gives the roots room to grow, so that will then keep the top growth growing. If you didn't trim the roots, the tree would stop growing and eventually die because the pot will become full of roots. So trimming the roots is the way of keeping the tree healthy and actually encouraging it to grow. We grow bonsai in a very open compost so that we can actually fertilise and water quite intensely, because we want the trees to grow rapidly in order for us to be able to prune them to the shape that we want. So they're not stunted, they are actually very, very healthy, and they are very, very well cared for and very well watered and fed on a regular basis. Because they are essentially trees, they are subjected to all the same pests and diseases as any other plant in the garden. So we have problems with aphids, caterpillars. Because they're in a pot, you can get problems with things like vine weevils and even ants in the pots. But they're nothing specific to bonsai. There are no particular bonsai pests and diseases. They are just trees at the end of the day. You can practice bonsai with just about any kind of tree. What we normally do, though, is we'll look for species of trees that have naturally small leaves, as opposed to things like horse chestnuts. So we tend to find things with small leaves, things like cotoneasters, small leaf elms, things like that. The process of bonsaiing a tree will make the leaves slightly smaller, but if you start off with a small leaf, then the job's halfway done for you, and they stay in proportion to the rest of the plant. If you start with a piece of garden centre material and do a styling on it, you can probably have something that's of a reasonable quality and easily recognisable as a bonsai within a couple of years. Some of the trees that I've got are getting on for 100 years old. In terms of species of trees that you can grow as bonsai, this particular tree here is a 35-year-old English oak tree. Cotoneaster trees, which again with the small leaves, but I've got cotoneasters in a variety of styles, so cascade styles. This is a smaller one. This particular tree is just a common privet that I actually dug up out of my own hedge. So I believe this tree to be getting on for about 100 years old now. It's only been a bonsai for about 15 to 20 of those years though. A very small forest of small leaf elms. This tree is a crabapple tree. We tend to use crabapple trees because in bonsai, two of the things that you can't reduce in size is you can't reduce the fruit and you can't reduce the size of the flowers. So if this was a proper apple tree, it would have full-size apples on it. With it being a crabapple, you get proportionately sized fruit on the tree, but you also get lovely blossom in spring as well. An English hawthorn tree, again, you get lovely autumn colour on these trees, very small leaf naturally, and you get flowers and fruit as well, which is a bonus. There's something for all seasons. And then I've got a couple of Scots Pines. This particular one was grown from seed, it was planted in 1969. Not by me, I'm afraid, but I've been styling it for about 10 years now. The easiest way to get into bonsai would be to find your local society, get in touch with like-minded people, and they can guide you along, because there's no substitute for actually doing it. You can read all about it, but actually doing it is the best teacher, I find.